me up. Can you verify it all on
Not
YouTube?
yet.
Okay. There's always a delay. So you just listen to me and don't listen to any audio playback because it'll be bizarre as hell. All right, so you're not seeing anything on YouTube yet, huh? There I am.
I had to hit the right button.
Okay. There I am, and there you are in the background. You want to turn and face the camera and see if you're gonna.
Hi.
Of course, if you do that, then you can't.
I can't see you.
You can't see what you look like. What's weird is it doesn't show you turning your face there. What a delay!
There's a delay.
There's such a delay. Yeah. All right. So just don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. The she-devil needs to just not be so. She's always like, "Why are you always worried about what you look like?" Now she gets to do the same thing. Why are you always worried about what you look like? That is not how my wife sounds, but that's how I imitate my wife. All right, so we're simultaneously going right now on YouTube and TikTok. And I will get started with my official disclaimer and monologue and in improvements to my show. By improvements to my show, I'm going to try, I'm not so good at it, to read a little less, not a lot less, read a little less and analyze a little more. I don't know that, oh, wifey is wonderful, someone says. See, look at that, they love you. So anyways, so yeah, it's not that I've had complaints about the amount of reading that I'm doing, but I feel like I read a bit much, so I'm going to try to summarize a little more. But I promise you, or I should say, don't get excited that I'm not going to do a lot of reading. I am going to do a lot of reading. I'm just going to do less reading than I normally would do, if that makes any sense.
Now, someone on YouTube has a question.
Somebody already has a question. Okay, what do we got on YouTube?
So, she says,
Speak.
I'll be asleep when you're live, but hope you can see my question above. I hope you saw that an Italian politician is saying that Luigi is a dual USA-Italy citizen. If Luigi is sent to El Salvador, can Italy go there and pick him up? Awesome question. And I will remind you that these are recorded. So if you're a TikTok person, you can watch the replay live. If you're not, YouTube will have a replay posted. Well, actually, YouTube just does it automatically, but I can also make it available other ways. So if you have to go to sleep and you're going to miss it, the answer to your question, we are going to talk about El Salvador. We're going to talk about Guantanamo Bay. We're going to talk about Luigi Mangione's Italian citizenship. Don't let me forget about the Italian citizenship, Rhonda. I'm not even 100%. Maybe you, as my researcher in the back, could even open up a tab and do a little search and see, confirm whether Luigi Mangione has Italian citizenship. Okay.
But yeah, we'll talk about that. We definitely will talk about that. So to give you a little preview, since you're asking, somebody's freaking out, like, can he get sent to El Salvador? I will tell you this: relax. He's not going to get sent to El Salvador. I'll explain that in a little bit. But it keeps getting asked by people because of Abrego Garcia.
Google is so creepy. It typed out the sentence before I could even
right.
read it.
We will talk about, so somebody is confirming, they said for you, that Luigi's had dual citizenship since 2008 in Italy. So,
oh, okay.
So, but again, if you want to double check just for yourself, for my shits and giggles, that's great, because everybody tells me things, and not that I don't believe you, that's not the point. I should see it with my own eyeballs before I start repeating it over and over and over again. But I believe you. But anyways, so what it's worth. What do we got? 2 minutes? 2 minutes before the start of the live. 2 minutes in the period. I'm a hockey fan. I keep hearing, whenever I say 2 minutes, I got 2 minutes remaining in the period. There's 2 minutes remaining in the period, which is usually when fights break out or something. But God, I miss hockey. I miss hockey. Anyways, so tonight, for those who don't know, and again, we're 1 minute away, so maybe I'll save it for the dialogue, but there's going to be 100% Luigi Mangione. Last couple times I've been on, it's been a lot of Brian Koberger. Brian Koberger has got more shit going on. I'm doing I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that in a minute. Just hold your horses, man. Relax. I'll get there.
You relax.
No, you relax. All right. Yeah, ever since I did some tweaks on my account, our viewership is just crushed. We used to have, 50 to 80 people in here towards the start of the show, and now I got 16. And I think I did it to myself. So that sucks. So if you could help us out, I would really appreciate it if people could smash the little heart button, tap the screen with 2 fingers as fast as you can. Give me some love and some likes. That will help, because we're just getting crushed on the metrics lately. Like I think I screwed myself up trying to fix some issues with my For You page, and I think I'm getting a little bit in trouble with my thing. Let's go to the monologue and the disclaimer. So first of all, I'm going to put a disclaimer up on the screen, by the way, for the TikTok thing. This is going to be practicing that whole thing I told you that I had to do scene selecting and change. So this is a scene selection for TikTok. YouTube's seeing my disclaimer on screen a little bigger. But basically, everything that you're going to hear tonight is educational and entertainment purposes only. Please don't consider me a news source. I'm not an authority. I am not a lawyer, even though I talk about the law quite a bit, and I do break down the legal terms and terminology as best I understand it. I feel like I have a better understanding of legal terms than the non-lawyer, your average non-lawyer. And again, I feel like people criticize me like, well, who are you? Are you a lawyer? Well, how are you speaking about all these things? I just happen to know a lot and educate myself a lot on these things. So again, everything here is educational, entertainment purposes. That's what the disclaimer basically says on YouTube as well. Also, when I repeat things or read things word for word, or even play video clips, keep in mind that that's called fair use in this country. You can, as long as you're analyzing or giving input and you're making it new and fresh because you're adding a new spin on it, that's allowed by fair use in the United States. So let's get that out of the way. And then thank you for the gift over my head. That was amazeballs. All right. So tonight, let me tell you what the monologue.
Thank you.
What our agenda is going to be for the night. And Rhonda has a bad cough, as you can hear.
Sorry.
Boy, our audience has just been crushed. So I got to stop looking at the audience. It's depressing watching how our numbers have just been destroyed. But anyways, here's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the federal government in New York has now officially indicted Luigi Mangione. What exactly does that mean? We're going to talk about that. Judge Margaret Garnett has been appointed in the federal case to oversee the jury, the trial of Luigi Mangione. What does that exactly mean? What does the choice of Margaret Garnett mean for Luigi Mangione? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What is my take on that? We're going to talk about that. What happened to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who was supposed to have a decision by the 16th of April on responding to Thomas Dickey's motion to suppress the arrest of Luigi Mangione? They did not respond to that. They, quote unquote, if you will, missed that deadline. Did they miss it? We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to explain what happened with that. We're going to talk about the prosecution in general in all 3 jurisdictions. Again, Luigi Mangione is facing trial in 3 different jurisdictions: the state of New York, the federal government, Southern District of New York, the federal government against him in New York State, and then also the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So he's got 3 jurisdictions: state of New York, federal government in New York, the Southern District of New York, United States versus Luigi Mangione, and then the third case of the Pennsylvania. And then we're going to talk about what's likely going to happen. So is the prosecution playing fair in those 3 cases? We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about
Thanks, my phone.
what's going to happen to Luigi Mangione. These are going to be the questions. Is he likely, in my opinion, to get the death penalty? Will he get life in prison? Is that what I think is going to happen? Can he be sent to El Salvador? I get this asked all the time. So I'm going to give you my interpretation of, can he be sent to El Salvador? Can he be sent to Guantanamo Bay? Nobody's asking me that, but that's the question you should be asking yourself, because the El Salvador thing, impossible, in my opinion. The Guantanamo Bay is possible, but not likely. But we're going to talk about that as well. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk a little bit about a crime marathon that I'm putting on this weekend for my subscribers. And if you want to subscribe this weekend, you get a lot of one-on-one interaction with me. We'll talk about that. And then if any gifts happen, and oh my God, are we already at 99% of our goal? Okay. Well, so let me tell you about that. We're going to talk about that too. So I did a thing with my wife, and I said, you know what, I'm going to put on a gift goal. Apparently I set it way too low, but that's okay. What I told Rhonda is if we get 100, we got 100% of the gifts, so we're already in trouble. So I told Rhonda that at the end of the night when we go to Q&A, I'm going to let her pick a filter to humiliate me on TikTok, and I will have to put on whatever humiliation filter she asked me to do questions and answers as whatever filter she asked me to apply, just for shits and giggles. So we did that. We were going to do that. I didn't know we were going to hit the goal in 30 seconds. But okay, so I set it too low. The test was solid. All right, so let's get into the Luigi indictment. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up on my screen an ABC News article talking about Luigi Mangione has been indicted. And apparently, that page, oh, I'm at the bottom of the page instead of the top of the page. So let me scroll up. On TikTok, it looks okay. On TikTok, it does not look okay. On YouTube, it looks fine. So let me help you guys out a little bit. I'm going to move things around on my screen in real time for you on the TikTok side so you can have a chance to kind of see what they're seeing on the YouTube side. I'm going to try to get better at this, so bear with me. Luigi Mangione was indicted by the federal government on, what was it? It was April 18th, which was, well, that wasn't today. That was yesterday. Anyways, so here's what happened. I want to recover this for you a little bit because it's been... So people have been freaking out. Oh my God, I'm so sad. I'm so depressed. Luigi Mangione got indicted. I get it. But you know what? This was always what was going to happen. I just want to remind people to just take a deep breath. It was always an almost certainty that the United States government was going to indict Luigi Mangione. Now, there was a small glimmer of hope for a while because they were taking so long to do so that I have speculated, is it possible that the government is having a hard time getting a grand jury to indict? But I expected, and I've commented on this many times, the government is allowed to reconvene grand juries over and over again until they find a grand jury that will indict. There's a famous saying, you probably heard it from people like Cynthia Thornton, if you follow her, because she hangs out sometimes in our channel. Cynthia was talking about the famous saying that says, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. Like literally, it's not hard for a grand jury for you to get a grand jury indictment. And again, if you follow this channel, you know that I try to explain a little bit what that means. A grand jury's job is not to determine guilt or innocence in the trial. All a grand jury does is they look at one side of the argument, only the prosecution. The defense isn't even there. Only the prosecution presents their evidence to a specially impaneled grand jury to look at the evidence and say, is this worth taxpayers' dollars? Should we prosecute this case and take it to trial? They don't know the defense's argument. They don't get to really see that. They just get to know, what does the federal government have against this individual, and does it look good enough that we think it's a good use of taxpayers' money to go to trial? Again, a grand jury, well, it's easy to get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. It doesn't matter what it is. They're almost always going to indict. So the indictment we knew was coming. So let's just remember that. There was that small hope that if Pennsylvania, if the Thomas Dickey, the attorney for Luigi Mangione, as you know, submitted a motion to basically suppress the evidence in the arrest of Luigi Mangione in Pennsylvania. It was because of the arrest in Pennsylvania and the information that they found on him, in part, that led to his extradition to New York, where he's being held in federal custody, awaiting both a state trial and a federal trial. Sometimes when I talk through this, I wonder to myself how much I'm confusing you, or whether everybody knows this and understands it entirely. The federal government has custody of Luigi Mangione right now. However, the state of New York is going to try Mr. Luigi Mangione first. When the state of New York is done trying Luigi Mangione, then the federal government, who has custody of him right now, then they will try him on similar charges that include the possibility of the death penalty. The state of New York does not have the death penalty. They haven't implemented the death penalty since 2004. I think technically it's on the books, but New York State does not charge anybody with the death penalty. And the state of New York is not going to be charging Luigi Mangione with the death penalty, despite the fact, by the way, oddly enough, and am I talking fast enough? I should slow down. That the state of New York is the one that has the terrorism charge, right? But they don't have the death penalty. The federal government, who has custody over Luigi, is going to try him second. And then last but not least, even though it started in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania was the first person to arrest Luigi Mangione and then remanded him into federal custody to be taken to New York. So in Pennsylvania is basically waiting to the last, right? So if for some miracle they can't convict Luigi Mangione in the state case, and then by some miracle they can't convict Luigi Mangione in the federal case for murder, then Pennsylvania will have a shot at convicting him for some gun charges and false ID. So he'll at least spend some time in prison if they can. Of course, that of course assumes that Pennsylvania can get those charges to stick. And you know, we need to ask, what happened to that decision in Pennsylvania? A judge, and I think I have their name here. It's Jackie. Do I have it here? There was a judge in the Pennsylvania case who basically demanded or required the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to
Thanks, Mimi.
to respond to Thomas Dickey's motion to suppress the evidence and basically let go of basically Pennsylvania drop all the charges. That was supposed to happen by April 16th. The federal government was supposed to give their indictment of Luigi Mangione by the 18th, and I have often speculated that those two things coincide. They wanted to kind of see if they wanted to kind of see if the charges in Pennsylvania were going to stick. Having said that, Pennsylvania still has not weighed in one bit whatsoever. When I looked into it, here's the weirdness, in case you want to understand. So a judge, Jackie, why the hell can't I find her name? You know what? Let me see if I can do a quick search.
I can do it for you.
Well, it's in my notes. Jackie Bernard, Judge Jackie Bernard from Blair County. I think she's the one that basically required the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to respond to Thomas Dickey by the 16th, and that did not happen. When you look online, all you find is news sources seem to universally agree that the judge, Jackie Bernard, allowed an extension for the time that the Commonwealth that the Commonwealth is allowed to respond. So in other words, the judge did extend that deadline. So there was a deadline of April 16th, and somehow behind the scenes, it's not public, and apparently that's not uncommon. Behind the scenes, the judge allowed the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to hold off and extend the time that it would before they decide whether that arrest was legal in Pennsylvania. Now let me ask you this devil's advocate question. Can they just not rule on it forever? At what point do they have to respond to Thomas Dickey's motion? Because he's basically said, you need to, you made an illegal arrest, and you need to acknowledge it was an illegal arrest and let him go. And their response was, we're not going to respond to that. How long can they do that? Yeah.
So Rain wants to know what's the maximum he can get for Pennsylvania charges.
I want to say it was 20 years, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it's 20 years, but I will have to look that. If somebody knows, by the way, the answer to that question, great question. What's the maximum penalty in the Pennsylvania cases for false identification? And it also included having items on him that were used in the commission of a murder, but it's not murder itself. It's having instruments on him that were used in the commission of a murder. But I thought it was something like 20 years for Pennsylvania. So where was I going with that?
Will the time he served in New York count?
I believe that depends on the judge. Some judges during sentencing will give you time served or whatever. That's part of the stuff that gets worked out behind the scenes, and some will say it starts at this day. That's kind of something I think. This is where I wish I had Cynthia on to confirm that. But I believe that's something that the courts can kind of go either way on. A judge can decide whether they're not going to give them some time served or not, or whether they're going to start it fresh at a certain point. All right. So the bottom, what I was trying to answer is there a certain point at which they can't keep delaying? Yes. At some point, there is a, and I'm trying to find it, mandamus? Mandamus, come on. I'm going to try to find it for you. It's like my notes are out of order. I thought I had everything lined out. Yeah, there it is. So if they take too long and Thomas Dickey decides, Thomas Dickey can file a motion that basically is an appeal or a writ of mandamus. A writ of mandamus basically says, I want a higher court to come in and force the lower court to make a decision. So that is something that Thomas Dickey has in his wheelhouse. So right now, a judge has let the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania take more time to decide to how they're going to handle that arrest and whether the arrest is illegal. But at some point, Thomas Dickey can say, enough, I'm going to file an appeal and a writ of mandamus, which basically requires a higher court, like the Supreme Court, to come in and basically tell the lower court, put up or shut up, and let this guy out. So it's just a delay tactic that's going on. It's just a delay tactic. So, and by the way, I have not seen any official date for Pennsylvania on the extension. The fact that they were given an extension seems to have been done in private. This is part of my whole diatribe when I get to it on is the prosecution in any of these court systems playing fair with Luigi Mangione? Is he getting a fair trial? Or are they just playing bullshit with this guy in every single court system? Their attitude, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Their attitude basically is, we'll get to it when we get to it, and you will wait because your guy is a murderer, and we're gonna and you'll just wait. So that's kind of their attitude.
Your TikTok title is incorrect tonight.
Oh, what does it say?
Gaming and true crime marathon.
So yeah, I did screw something up. I saw that on your screen, and that I screwed that up.
It's for TikTok, but then for YouTube is fine.
All right, well, technical difficulties on our end. So, okay, so again, there's the indictment. We know about that. And I want to say there was something that I watched. I keep saying my friend Cynthia Thornton. Cynthia Thornton and myself do not know each other, but she's been on my live before. I call her a friend because we had a great conversation and we've been very friendly with each other. But I don't want to try to act like, hey, we're buddies and we know each other. But I did watch her live where she was talking about the indictment. So she got to it a little early. Got something for me? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So she got to it a little early. And she did bring up an interesting point that I want to say. There is a slight... Okay, back up one hair. They indicted Luigi Mangione, but as far as I understand, and somebody needs to correct me in the thing because in the chat if I'm wrong, while the federal government has indicted Luigi Mangione, they have not specifically stated yet whether or not they're going to seek the death penalty. Now, again, the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney General, has directed the state of New York to go after the death penalty. However, the Southern District of New York has not officially yet, and people are saying correct, the Southern District of New York has not officially stated that they're going to seek the death penalty. They have been directed to do so. They have been directed to do so by the Attorney General, but they have not officially stated it. So what we have right now is Luigi Mangione is indicted. He will be facing the charges of murder and the various charges that go along with it in the Southern District of New York after the state has their try at it. But it has not been officially stated that they're going to seek the death penalty. They could ignore the Attorney General's direction, in my understanding. They could. Whether or not they're going to do that or not, that's a whole different thing. But this is part of the whole fight that I want to show you tonight as we get into this. So Karen Agnifilo is continuing to spar. Oh, I wanted to... See, I keep getting all over the place. Let's go back to Cynthia Thornton's comments that I heard on her live that relate to the death penalty issue. One of the things that Cynthia said was, keep this in mind. If the Southern District of New York does agree to seek the death penalty and then announce that they're going to seek the death penalty, it kicks in a special rule that essentially they will impanel a special jury that is qualified to oversee death penalty cases. So what does that mean? As she was pointing out, what it means is that basically anyone who has publicly stated, I don't believe in the death penalty. The death penalty is murder, and murder is murder. So I'm not going to do that. And by the way, I'm not taking any guests right now, so I'm going to say no to guests until at least at the very end. Anyways, so I just want to say that, like, if they seek the death penalty, a special death penalty qualified jury will be seated. That jury has to already state they're okay with the possibility of giving somebody death, right? So if you don't have that they could have all kinds of feelings about the death penalty. But if they have to go for the death penalty, they will seat a jury that specifically is willing to give the death penalty. What that can mean for Luigi Mangione, if they decide to seek the death penalty, which again I expect that they will, I do expect that they will seek the death penalty. But if they do, that could lead to the possibility that a jury is more likely to convict Mangione of something. It may not be the death penalty, but it makes them, because they're already willing to give somebody death, if it comes to that, they're more likely, by extension, to convict of something. It may not be death, but they may be willing to convict in life in prison without the possibility of parole. Two versions of the indictment.
That's what somebody posted, that there were one that was redacted and the public can't see it.
Oh, interesting. So I did not hear about a redacted version of the indictment of Luigi Mangione. All right, so let's talk a little bit about on the screen for the YouTube groups. We have the ABC News announcement of Luigi Mangione being indicted, and as you know, there was this big fight between Pam Bondi and the prosecution and Karen Agnifilo. And here's how it basically went. I'm going to summarize it real quick for you. The U.S. Attorney General went on several different public media platforms, including Instagram, and made a statement from all kinds of public pulpits that Luigi Mangione is a murderer, did not give him the presumption of innocence, that he's a murderer, and that she's directing the federal government to seek the death penalty. Karen Agnifilo lost her shit and said, oh my gosh, you can't call my guy a murderer before he's even been indicted. He hasn't even been indicted yet, so you can't call him a murderer, and you certainly can't call him a murderer because he has the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law. My wife did ask, she said somebody was asking, does a grand jury need to be unanimous? The grand jury, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, so I'm not even going to spitball. So again, the grand jury does not convict anyone. The grand jury's only job is to decide whether or not it's able to proceed to trial. And I don't know if the grand jury had to be unanimous, but it's a good question. I imagine they probably did, but good question. Anyways, so where was I going with that? So again, Karen flipped out, and she made a big motion to the court system saying, one, Pam Bondi is violating my client's, basically presumption of innocence. She's biasing the grand jury that's currently seated, because there was already a grand jury seated trying to get an indictment against Luigi Mangione, and she's basically saying, look, your grand jury that's right now seated and has not indicted Luigi is hearing the U.S. Attorney General tell everyone in America there's enough cause to indict him. So, right, that's part of their job, is to decide whether Luigi Mangione even should be indicted, right? And yet she's going on national TV as the head of the entire judicial system saying, if there was ever a case, this was her wording, if there was ever a case that this is justified, this is the one. So she's told a jury that it qualifies for the death penalty as well. And that's also something that the grand jury was supposed to decide, is whether or not it has enough factors involved. Actually, a different panel reviews whether or not it has enough aggravating factors to qualify for the death penalty. But the point being is that all of these things being said before the indictment and before the statement was made that they are going to seek the death penalty was premature. And Karen flipped out about it and said that she basically asked the judge to immediately pull the death penalty off the table because her client has already been compromised and cannot get a fair trial in a death penalty case. To which the prosecution responded just recently. Now I'm pulling up on screen the prosecution's basic answer to Karen Agnifilo. At the time that the prosecution responded to Karen's big, you need to pull the death penalty off the table immediately, the prosecution's response was basically, sorry Karen, you're too early. We haven't even indicted Luigi Mangione. And so if you want to argue about how we indicted Luigi Mangione, you can wait until we indict him. And if you want to bitch about, for lack of a better word, if you want to bitch about how we shouldn't seek the death penalty, wait until we formally announce that we're asking for the death penalty. You're too early. So this is where we're getting here on Yahoo News or this Daily News. Prosecutors asked the court to deny Luigi Mangione's bid to block the death penalty. And we talk about, jumping down here, on Tuesday, in response to the defense's letter. So I'm going to show you Karen Agnifilo's letter. I told you I wasn't going to do a whole lot of reading, but I wasn't also going to cut back a whole lot either. So we're going to see Karen's letter. But on Tuesday, the defense, in response to the defense's letter, prosecutors asked the court to deny her motion, arguing the case has not yet been indicted and the government has not filed a formal notice of intent to seek the death penalty. And so, a defendant who wishes to challenge the legal propriety of death penalty may do so at the appropriate time, after they've been indicted and in the appropriate forum, before a judge who's been assigned, before the district assigns a judge, basically presiding over the case. At the time that all happened, we didn't know that there was a federal judge assigned to the case. This is Margaret Garnett. I told you we'd talk about her. So, at the time that they wrote this, all what happened was Pam Bondi made a defamatory statement against Luigi, calling him a murderer. She complained that was inappropriate and take the death penalty off the table. The prosecution said, we haven't even indicted Luigi, so you need to wait until we indict him and tell you that we're seeking the death penalty before you start filing motions about how we can't do that. And so that's what that whole fight was about. I probably won't spend all my time showing you Karen's letter in detail because it's probably good enough. But this is where you would find it if you're looking on YouTube. Also, if you're looking, I'll try to center this a little bit better for you on TikTok. This is from LuigiMangione.com. And if you look over here on this side of the screen that I'm trying to help you out, there's a federal case update letter filed 4/16. There's the letter from Karen Agnifilo where she's basically, she's responding to the prosecution now, who's saying essentially, you can wait until Luigi Mangione is indicted, which happened the day after, right? So she writes this letter on the 16th. I think they indicted on the 17th. She writes a letter and says essentially, and I'm going to pull some, here's the letter where I've highlighted, so now you can see this a little bit better. Let me try to arrange this again a little better for our viewers on TikTok. Hopefully that gives you about as much as I can show you. All right, so basically she repeats to Judge Ramos. This is not the judge who's now officially in charge of this case. That was the judge who was just deciding on this motion. They were in receipt of the government's letter dated April 14th in response to Mangione's motion filed April 11th. The government makes the following assertions. The defendant's motion is not ripe. That's what they said. You're too early. It's not ripe. So you can't be filing complaints about the death penalty because you're ahead of the game. Wait until he's charged with the death penalty before you start complaining about it. So she says the government makes the following statements. The defendant's motion is not ripe as the case has not yet been indicted. And 2, the defendant cannot dictate the manner in which the government presents evidence to a grand jury. We will address these issues below. So again, Karen was saying essentially, you need to stop that jury right now because that jury that's been impaneled just heard the U.S. Attorney General tell everybody that her man is guilty, he's a murderer, and that death penalty is warranted in this case. Your grand jury heard that before they made a decision. That jury needs to be dismissed. And they basically said, Karen has no right to tell us what to do with the grand jury. She can wait until the grand jury comes back with the response, and then she can bitch about things if she wants to. So I like to break things down in simple terms, legal terms, you know. So the government has not responded to the other 4 points. This is what Karen says. Karen raised 6 points in her argument against to the court, saying, "Hey, look, this whole case is destroying my man's reputation. It's making him look guilty before he has his first day in court. And here's the 6 reasons why." 2 of which had to do with the whole indicting him and the jury. But the other 4 they didn't even respond to. So this is the purple paragraph I want you to focus on. Is there something I need to take a pause for? Okay. The government has not responded to the other 4 points raised in the defendant's motion. 1, ordering the Attorney General to certify that she's read Local Rule 23.1. I laugh my ass off every single time I read this. Karen Agnifilo claims that Pam Bondi violated Local Rule 23.1 that says basically someone involved in the prosecution of the case in any way, like the U.S. Attorney General, can't prejudice the jury against their client by making extrajudicial statements from Instagram and CNN and Fox and every media outlet saying the guy is guilty before he's had his day in court. That was against the violation of Rule 23.1, and Karen says, I want the court to make sure that she is certified in writing that she knows what that rule is, 23.1. Furthermore, I want her restrained from making any extrajudicial statements that violate that rule after she's signed a piece of paper saying, I've read the rule and I won't do that anymore. I want you to order the government to produce for in-camera inspection any documents from the Southern District of New York and the Attorney General's consideration of the death penalty. And 4, ordering the government produce documents and communications between government and anyone advocating for any particular sentence by or on behalf of any business, corporate interest, lobbying, or other party directly or indirectly. Let me slow down and bring that through the universal translator for you. Karen Agnifilo is suggesting that people with financial interest, i.e. perhaps lobbyists, health insurance lobbyists, corporations, may be actually in Pam Bondi's ear telling her, you need to execute this guy. You need to go after the death penalty. So Karen Agnifilo is saying, I want to see all communication that was submitted to Pam Bondi that gave her she said that she, under careful consideration, she's decided to direct the government to seek the death penalty. Karen Agnifilo says, I want to see all of that documentation that you carefully analyzed, and I want to know what healthcare industry, what lobbyist, what political movement, who's in your ear telling you to seek the death penalty. We want to know. And what she's saying furthermore is, all 4 of those points that she raised of the 6 in her letter complaint to the court system that Judge Ramos looked at, they did not address. The prosecution did not address. All they said was, shut up and wait for an indictment. You're too early to take death penalty off the thing. We haven't even charged him with a death penalty. And so her argument is, because they didn't respond to these 4, the court should automatically grant that. All of these should happen, she said. Because they didn't argue about it, and because they didn't argue about it, we are asking the judge to now tell Pam Bondi, please write that you know what local rule 23.1 is, and that you won't do that shit anymore. That's pretty fun. Now, again, whether or not a judge will do that or not, we don't know.
Detention.
Yeah, she go to detention, write it on a chalkboard. And in addition, Judge Ramos, who this was addressed to, is no longer the judge in charge of this thing. It's now Margaret Garnett. We're going to talk about that change because an actual district judge now has been assigned. So, there we go. Do I talk too fast? I probably talk too fast, right? All right, let's continue on. Was there any more highlights? Again, I don't want to read all this to you, but there were some important things in here. This court need not... Oh yeah, she's saying that the whole argument, they're saying, Karen, you're too early. It's not ripe. You have to wait until we've indicted him and just told you that we're seeking the death penalty. She says this court need not wait until the indictment is returned, which happened the next day anyways, and a notice of intent to seek the death penalty is filed. The United States Attorney General has made very public and prejudicial directive that death should be sought. Moreover, because the Attorney General has violated Rule 23.1 and has prejudiced this grand jury process, this matter is ripe right now. Once a prejudicial grand jury returns a death-eligible indictment, it is simply too late. Guess what happened the day after that letter was filed? They filed an indictment. So what she's saying is, it's too late to wait until you indict, because she's already biased that jury. She's already biased the grand jury that's seated, and they said, shut up and wait until we indict, and then they indicted the next day. So that's not going to happen. She's not going to win that because the indictment's already come down. They're not going to retroactively go, oh, our bad, let's pull that grand jury and start over again. But that's what she's saying. It was ripe, and you're already. And so what does this mean? In my I'm not a lawyer terminology, grounds for appeal. When you could get done with this entire trial and have no other thing brought up, and they will come back and appeal the sentence based on this move right here today. This is grounds for an appeal. That grand jury should have never indicted him in the first place. They were biased by an attorney general who told them that it was okay to do it, that he was a murderer, and that they had every grounds to do so, and that's why they indicted, and it never would have gone to a death penalty trial if that hadn't happened. It'll be a grounds for appeal if nothing else happens. Does that mean you're going to win the appeal? No. But let me bring you another point that I don't bring up a lot. This case is going to take years. Luigi Mangione is going to be in court for years. First of all, the state has to go first. That court's going to probably take a good year, maybe more. When that's done, then the federal case is going to start. That case is going to take a year or more, probably. And in that case, and I don't want to make this political, but keep in mind, right now we are under an administration with Trump where Pam Bondi repeatedly stated Trump wants to make America safe again. He's directed me to go after all death penalty cases. We're seeking the death penalty. Trump is not even likely going to be the president when Luigi Mangione is having his federal case reviewed. There'll be a different administration. Does it mean it's going to be an administration less likely to seek the death penalty or less tolerant? We don't know, but things are going to change. My wife handed me a note. What are the chances that one of the jurors will cause jury nullification? That question comes up all the time, and it's legitimate. So what is jury nullification? Jury nullification is similar to basically an acquittal. It's like, it doesn't matter whether or not the guy did it or not. We say not guilty, and we're not going to charge him with anything. That's a possibility. That's kind of jury nullification. It is something that is inherent in juries that they can do. The jury's decision in this case, in any case, is final, and they do not have to explain themselves. So, for example, what isn't told to juries a lot is that those things, well, they're told that. They're told, look, your decision is final. But they don't remind you what that means. You literally can say, yes, this guy committed the crime as written in such and such law, and he did it, and we have no doubt that he did it. And you can still say, we find the defendant not guilty. That is what you call jury nullification. It's like, yeah, he did it, but we're not going to convict him. And some people say, well, why would they do that? If they feel the law is unjust, or if they feel that the law doesn't properly have a way to handle the situation at hand, then they can say the law is unjust. And furthermore, the jury doesn't have to explain themselves. They can just say not guilty, and they don't have to explain why.
Now, Michelle says that she heard that they can dismiss that juror.
So that's a nuanced thing. You don't generally just dismiss a juror unless there's reason and cause to do so. Cause is not that you don't like their answer. This is why we have hung juries in America. If it was the case, to play devil's advocate, that a juror can be kicked off because they're not going along with the other 12 jurors, then we would never have a hung jury. The reason hung juries happen is because one person in 12 said, I'm not convicting. You guys can all pack sand and I'm never going to change my mind. They don't just kick that person off and put somebody else in who will convict. That would be illegal. That's not a fair trial. So I think there's a little misnomer on the idea that they can just... Now, during the trial, there are things that can happen where jurors can be dismissed if they show that they disobeyed a rule. For example, like if the judge says
talking to people.
Yeah, talking to people. If they're told not to watch the news and then they got caught watching the news, or they're on Facebook talking about, yeah, this guy's guilty of sin, we're going to convict tomorrow. That juror would be dismissed. That kind of stuff can be dismissed, but not just your opinion. That juror's opinion cannot be just thrown out because they don't like the opinion of the juror.
Have you told them about the person that rented the truck or whatever that had jury nullification on it?
Yeah, I was laughing. Yeah, that's funny. I was going to mention it a minute ago and I forgot about it. Somebody had posted, one of my followers had posted a truck that, and I forgot who the group is, but it's a group that basically supports the innocence of Luigi Mangione, driving around New York with a giant truck on the side that reminds people of jury nullification. They're just literally driving all over New York City with a humongous billboard that says, remember jury nullification. Now, that's not illegal to do, and I think it's a little funny. But and it's funny because a lot of mainstream media have been asking the question, is this going to lead to jury nullification? But it's something that they don't want to talk about. Like they
didn't get in trouble for talking about this.
You know, TikTok hopefully is not going to kick us off because we're talking about that's a legal right of Americans.
Right.
That is something that we're allowed to do. So we should be allowed to talk about it. And for God's sake, if CNN and Fox can talk about jury nullification, I can talk about jury nullification. I think. We'll see. All right.
Oh, Cynthia's here.
Cynthia's here. Oh, what was the question for Cynthia?
She said they can only dismiss a juror that refuses to deliberate, but not because they are the sole holdout.
Right. So if they refuse to participate in the discussion and just stonewall them, for example, nice.
But the other question was about.
Hey, Cynthia, would you like to take the mic and explain this a little further? I'd love to have you on if you're. I know that I'm just blindsiding you with that, but would you be willing to take the mic and I don't know. I've never done it. I'm using TikTok Live Studio to broadcast this. I've never been able to. I've never tried to bring a guest on.
She said she'll try.
She'll try. Let me see if I can get Cynthia invited to come on.
And then we're gonna remember the question we were gonna ask her.
Oh my gosh! How do I invite her? How do I invite her from the studio?
Maybe she can just click to join.
Let me see if you can. Can you send a request, Cynthia, to come up on the mic?
She's not sure how.
Oh, give me a second, people. I'm so sorry, but I would love to have Cynthia answer this in her own words.
But you can ask me anything.
Right. I know. I would love to have. And was she here? Cynthia, were you here when I was talking about your comments you made about the special in-panel jury specifically qualified for death cases? I talked about that a little bit. I saw that on your live.
She just had something pop up on the screen and it went away.
Oh, can you do it again?
I think it worked, Cynthia.
Can you do it again, Cynthia? I was looking at my phone trying to find a way to invite you from my phone, and my wife said she saw something pop up saying you were asking to join.
It popped up to the left of the screen like earlier.
So if you can try that one more time, Cynthia, I would appreciate it. If not...
It says request. I think you hit request.
Yeah, at the bottom on your screen it should be a request to join or something like that.
Somebody said it's a blue-pink icon.
Just give us one moment to work this out. I apologize for the delay.
It'd be worth the wait. Cynthia's amazing.
The bad part is I don't know that YouTube will get her audio. That's the horrible part.
Oh.
But we'll not worry about that. Let's just see if we can get her on. Shit, I'd never had this problem. I'd never thought this problem through before bringing a guest on when I'm on here. Yeah, lower left corner next to comments. We'll give it a second to go. If she can't, there it is. How come? View. Apparently, I got more than one person asking. Okay.
Oh, Kimberly.
Kimberly was probably testing it out for her to make sure it works.
It works, Kimberly.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm so glad you joined us. I don't know that. Well, actually, you know what? I think YouTube might actually be able to hear you. All right. So, do you want me to rephrase the questions, or you just want to go with it?
Yeah, no, just I just attend your lives whenever I can because I enjoy them. But if you have anything specific you want to ask me, I'm happy to.
Well, while we have, I have. Okay, so let's start from the top. Question number one. I heard you on your live when you were talking about this case the day before this. You were talking about what it means if and when, and as far as I understand, the Southern District of New York has not officially announced that they're going to seek the death penalty. We expect that they will, but they haven't stated that they will. That's my first understanding. But then you made a comment that I want you to clarify, that if they do seek the death penalty, it requires a special impaneled jury that's death penalty qualified. Can you go into that again?
Yes. So basically what you were explaining earlier in your live, that a death qualified jury has to be people that say they would be willing to give the death penalty as a punishment if it is warranted by the case. So people that are against the death penalty, or they will look at these people's social media, if they've said anti-death penalty things, they will not be seated on that jury.
Yeah. And you also further stated, because of that, it could potentially mean they're more likely then to convict on something, even if they don't give the death penalty. Isn't that something that you kind of hinted at?
Yes, there is a general feeling among a lot of people that are more pro-death penalty maybe are seen as more tough around law and order, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, right.
And that they're just more, I don't know if there's ever been actual studies. That's something I would like to look into, but there is the consensus that they're more likely to convict on something.
Right. So I think we covered that, and I quoted your the famous thing. I've heard it before you said it, but the whole, like, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. It's like we knew the indictment was coming from the federal government. It's not hard to get the indictment, and it doesn't mean guilt. It just means you can proceed to court. You can proceed to trial. While you're here, another question that I wanted to ask you, again, to maybe just readdress that jury thing, and then I got one more after that. So the juror. So you have a juror. Can a juror just be dismissed? What are the conditions that a juror can be dismissed from a jury, and what does that look like?
So I've seen cases before when there's like a single holdout where the jury will complain. Because they're wanting to reach a decision and they have one or two holdouts. But the only reason you can't get someone kicked off the jury because they're a holdout. And the judges will make that clear, as long as they're willing to discuss it. So as long as they're willing to deliberate, right?
Right.
You can't just kick them off for not going along with everybody else.
Right.
And a lot of times in hung juries, I mean, that's what it comes down to. They keep discussing and they see they're not going anywhere. So the foreman comes back and says, we're hopelessly deadlocked. Sometimes the judge will say, I don't care, go back and try again. And I'll have them try for another several hours, another day or day, But if a foreman comes back 2 or 3 times and says, we are hopelessly deadlocked, at that point, a mistrial is going to be declared.
And clarify for us. Let's say you have one juror that continues to deliberate, holds it up, and it's a hung jury. Can they just reconvene and try the whole thing over again without any new circumstances, or do they have to have something new and they have to accept the hung jury response?
No, if there's a hung jury, it's a mistrial and it starts over.
You
would start over with the whole process starts over. You would start over with an entire new jury and an entire new trial. I mean, sometimes a prosecution, if there's a hung jury, is more willing to want to cut a deal at that point, rather than go through a second trial. But with a really high profile case like this, they wouldn't hesitate to just try him again.
And at some point you would think, if they did try it again, and certainly I think that they would try it again if they did get a hung jury the first time, at some point they may be able to allow to keep retrying it and retrying it, but at some point it becomes a taxpayer issue of how much is it worth the government to keep retrying people if they, like, I can't imagine them having 2 hung juries and going for a third try. There does come to some point where they just are just going to give up on it, right? I mean, if that happened,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that answers those questions. Why a couple of other questions, because this came from my wife. I don't know which it came from, YouTube or TikTok. Do you think there's a possibility that they'll change the venue? Is it going to move out of New York in any way, shape, or form?
That's what Michelle on TikTok.
It's not impossible, but I don't think so. Usually a change of venue is the defense says we cannot get a fair trial in this venue because of the publicity, right?
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes the prosecution can say that too, but I think the defense is not going to want to change the venue, first of all.
Right.
Hard stop. They're not going to want to change the venue. I'm sure the prosecution would love a change of venue.
Right.
But they're going to come up against 2 problems with that. The first problem is that because this case has gotten wide publicity across the entire country, not just locally, it'd be hard to argue that a change of venue is going to help with the publicity problem. Second of all, they're going to be accused of forum shopping to get a jury that is more inclined toward the prosecution. And so I don't think that's going to happen. I'm sure they would love to. The prosecution would love to move this to federal court in Oklahoma or someplace, but it's not going to happen. I don't believe that's going to happen.
And I think we should riff a little bit on why that's the case. In my opinion, and I'm assuming this is your opinion as well, Luigi's in a great state as far as the state already doesn't believe in the death penalty. New Yorkers seem to be actually in a large way behind Luigi Mangione. So it is to the defense's benefit to keep it right where it's at. And this is also why the prosecution would probably like to get it out where New Yorkers are not so sympathetic. Is that kind of your take on that as well?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So there's one other question I wanted to ask you while you're on, and you can certainly stay longer because it's awesome having some professional legal advice on there. But I keep getting asked all the time whether or not they're going to send Luigi Mangione to El Salvador. And personally, before you answer, my thinking is that is an impossibility. It's an impossible situation. The case that people are freaking out about because of Brego Garcia is a whole different situation, and you or I can explain that, or you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. The thing that nobody's asking me about is, could Luigi Mangione be sent to Guantanamo Bay? That is possible, but extremely unlikely. Do you have any thoughts on the whole El Salvador, again, Guantanamo Bay option of him being basically somehow stripped of his rights as a U.S. citizen and sent somewhere else? And lastly, because somebody else brought this up, he's a dual citizen apparently of Italy. Does that make any kind of factor in here that he's dual citizenship with Italy?
I think the only factor that the dual citizenship makes is that the Italian authorities may intervene on his behalf at some point.
What would that look like?
Just like diplomatic, right? Just request, right? By the government.
That he gets sent back to Italy instead of being held in an American trial, or?
No, just that it would just be limited to the death penalty.
Gotcha.
Most likely.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And your thoughts on El Salvador? Yeah.
I would say, like, right now, I don't think there's a risk. In the future, never say never, because we have a big dispute right now between the administrative branch and the judicial branch, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there has been talk of building more prisons in El Salvador to send quote unquote homegrown prisoners to. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think Guantanamo or El Salvador is going to happen without a conviction, because then you're going against the rights to confer with your attorney. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So would I say if this kind of thing continues and there is a conviction in the federal case one day, and he wasn't given the death penalty, but he was given like a 20-year sentence or life sentence or something, can I promise he would never be shipped to like Guantanamo or like a U.S. prison that they've outsourced to El Salvador? No. But while he's still pending trial, I don't think they're going to be able to send him anywhere.
So let me, I'm going to give my non-legal opinion about some legal issues with the whole thing. So let me explain that a little bit. Is my understanding, in the recent case with Abrego Garcia actually was a Salvadorian. He came over to the United States 10 years ago, or maybe more than that, and was living in the U.S., but he was a Salvadorian. And in his case in particular, he was being, basically they had asked not to allow him to be extradited back to El Salvador, even though he was a Salvadorian citizen. And so there was a request, basically, or a promise made to him that they wouldn't allow El Salvador to bring him back. And they basically broke their promise and allowed him to be sent back. It's, in my opinion, a 100% completely different situation. Luigi Mangione is not Salvadoran. He never had any ties to El Salvador. And so that would be almost an impossibility. And here's where the last thing I want to say about that, the Guantanamo Bay thing. This is what freaked me out the most after 9/11 and the whole Guantanamo Bay. The whole purpose of that was done so that one man, the President of the United States, in a time of terrorism like after 9/11, is allowed to deem a U.S. citizen in America an enemy combatant to the country. And if that one man decides that you're an enemy combatant to your nation, he can strip you of your U.S. citizenship and protections, send you out to some other country where things like, I don't want to say the word because I think TikTok won't allow me to say it, but where anything can happen to you, because there's protections in a U.S. prison that they just can't do certain things. But they can do whatever the hell they want in Cuba. They can do whatever the hell they want in El Salvador. They can do horrendous things to you that we would never allow in the United States. And when we set a precedence in this country of allowing a president to declare somebody an enemy combatant of the United States, saying that you, as a U.S. citizen, has declared war on the United States, and therefore you've lost all your rights as a U.S. citizenship, and we're going to send you out into another country to be handled privately, outside of protection of U.S. lawyers, out of all of your rights stripped, and anything that happens to you just happens to you. That's just what you deal with. That's what's going on there, and it could happen. It could happen under the hypothetical situation that a president decides to call Luigi Mangione an enemy combatant of the United States and has declared war against the U.S.
Yes, I mean, they could try that. That's the concern, that they can do that about anybody, that they can do that somebody that's vandalized a Tesla dealership. I mean... But it's never been done as far as I know. It hasn't... No, it's a huge leap. That would be a huge line that would be crossed. I mean, crazy things are happening, so I can't say, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I will point out that there have been people sent to CICOT in El Salvador. They're not El Salvadorians, however. There have been people from Venezuela and other countries sent there.
With U.S. citizenship?
No, not with U.S. citizenship.
See, that's the kicker. That's the kicker that I feel like we would set a new precedent in this country if somebody with U.S. citizenship can be shipped to a foreign country's prison system.
Absolutely, and that's I can think the most terrifying thing that I've spoke to a lot of lawyers this week, that it was very terrifying to kind of hear those words mentioned in the Oval Office meeting when he was talking about homegrown. He means sending U.S. citizens. So they're testing the waters. I don't know, but it's very concerning.
Yeah, and I had somebody in our chat warn me, like, hey, you're about to get your live cut if you keep talking about this, and so I want to be careful about that. But you're right. I think what I'll say about that to end that conversation is, it's never been done in the United States ever. And to strip somebody of their U.S. citizenship like that and send you to another country like that in these kind of conditions, and if it happens, there's going to be a lot of problems. It's going to be a weird day for everyone, and it's going to be world changing.
If people are pending trial and you just decide, no, you don't get a trial, we've just decided, you're going away, right?
Right.
That's kind of the end of our republic.
It's terrifying to me. It's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and if you hang out a little bit later, I guess what I was going to do next, and I don't know her personally. I don't know if you have any personal relationship or knowledge of Margaret Garnett, but I was going to talk about what I found out about Margaret Garnett's history a little bit and talk about what I see as positives. And so I certainly would love your take on that. Do you, before maybe I put you on hold for a little bit for me to go through my thoughts, do you have a personal history at all with Margaret Garnett? Do you know anything about her?
No, the only thing I found out is that she graduated from Notre Dame with my son's godmother, so she at least knows her. But the only other thing I know is that she was a prosecutor with the Southern District of New York as recently as 2023.
Yeah.
And that she does have a recusal policy, although I think I looked at it very carefully and I think I misinterpreted that. So don't think she's necessarily going to recuse herself from this case.
What was the conflict you thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think that still there's a conflict of interest. There are cases from Southern District of New York that she will recuse herself from due to the fact that she's been a prosecutor with that office very recently.
Oh, okay.
And she's only been on the bench like a little over a year, so she has a lot of experience as a prosecutor. That's her background. She doesn't have a lot of judicial experience for me that I've been able to find so far to give any indication of like what type of judge she is or, you know, how she may handle issues in this case. But I haven't done a deep dive, that there's just not a lot of history that I was able to find.
Well, that's good, because I've got some notes that I have found about her, and I'll tell you what I found, and then you can tell me if you have some thoughts about what I found and whether you have some thoughts about that. And again, you're either welcome to just hang out where you're at and just kind of be kind of quiet while I go through it, or I can invite you back up if you want, which either way you want to do. Okay. All right. So
I have a question before you go.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so somebody said that Luigi's court was canceled today. Do we know why?
Luigi's court date was canceled today?
Diddy was in court, somebody said.
Oh, Diddy. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was going to say.
Never mind.
Yeah, never mind. Never mind. False start.
I'll just drop off. I'll drop off and listen, and if you want me to come back on, just let me know.
Okay, Cynthia, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming,
thank
Cynthia.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so here's what I have found about Margaret Garnett that I have sussed out, and what I personally feel it can or can't mean for Luigi Mangione. So as Cynthia was stating, Margaret Garnett has been a U.S. District Judge. She's been in the prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, right where this is happening at. Former Deputy U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. In legal circles, I found Margaret Garnett is regarded as a formidable and experienced jurist, particularly in cases involving violent crimes and public corruption. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Her extensive background as a federal prosecutor, including leadership roles for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, suggests a deep familiarity with complex criminal cases. And given her prosecutorial background, an emphasis on law enforcement integrity. That's the part that I keyed in. She believes in law enforcement integrity. She has overseen cases in which she went after breaches of law enforcement doing shady shit, essentially. So she's not necessarily super pro law enforcement. She believes in keeping law enforcement their integrity. And so that's a good thing if you believe that the prosecution or law enforcement overstepped their bounds anywhere, because she believes in enforcing the integrity of law enforcement. Again, maybe I'm overemphasizing that, but that's something that's important. Also, I want to point out, and again, I hate to make this political, but she was a Biden appointee. So Biden nominated her, and she was voted on by Democrats and Republicans. Every single Republican except for two voted to reject her nomination. But it passed anyways, and she was appointed as this representative as a district judge in the Southern District of New York. The Republicans didn't want her in. So what does that tell you? You've got an administration who's Republican, who's saying that they want Luigi Mangione because they want to be hard on crime. Republicans don't like this judge. You could almost kind of make the leap that maybe it's a good thing a little bit for Luigi that it wasn't a Trump-appointed judge, right? This is a Biden-appointed judge who believes in enforcing the integrity of law enforcement, and Republicans didn't want her nominated, but she passed anyways. So that was some interesting things. As the commissioner of New York Department of Investigations, DOI, from 2018 to 21, Garnett led efforts to root out fraud, corruption, and abuse of power within city agencies. This is also good news, in my opinion, for Luigi Mangione. She wants to go after fraud, corruption, and abuse of power in New York City departments, which could include something like the police department, the prosecutorial's office. Again, integrity of law enforcement. So, could this be a good thing? That's my reading between the lines feeling of things that I'm seeing with her. Notably, she oversaw investigations into the New York City Police Department's handling of racial injustice protests in 2020. She has actually oversaw things about the NYPD doing stuff wrong. So again, this judge maybe is a positive thing. I think that what I see so far is that the judge has a history of being fair, and going after corruption and law enforcement misconduct. So these could be good things, especially if there has been law enforcement misconduct in this case. You would argue that she probably doesn't have a lot of tolerance for law enforcement misconduct. So if Karen Agnifilo can bring to the forefront that law enforcement did something inappropriately, this might be the judge you would want, or a judge like this. That's kind of my take on that so far. During her confirmation hearing, I pointed this out before, it was noted that Garnett played a pivotal role in exonerating 5 individuals wrongfully convicted of murder in 2020. She emphasized that her role as a prosecutor is to do justice, underscoring a broader commitment beyond securing convictions. In other words, I didn't mention that part. I thought it was going to make a different point. The point being is that she's actually helped overturn wrongful convictions. Again, she believes in what is the wording I used? Integrity of law enforcement and integrity of the system, and she will overturn and help oversee the overturning of wrongful convictions. This, to me, are all good things potentially for Luigi Mangione. Again, she's a fair judge, I think, so it's not like she's going to let him off if he's guilty. But, it could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse. And yes, Republicans did object to the appointment of Judge Margaret Garnett to the U.S. District Court for Southern District of New York. Her confirmation on November 28th, 2023, like Cynthia was saying, she's relatively recently confirmed, was narrowly approved by the Senate on a 49-46 vote. Notably, only 2 Republican senators voted in favor of her confirmation, while 46 opposed it. This indicates that the majority of Republican senators object her appointment. So again, in a Republican Congress or a Republican administration who wants to be tough on crime for Trump, maybe it's a good thing that Republicans aren't real happy with this appointment of a judge.
Thank you, Love Life.
Let me read this note my wife just sent. KFA has to submit omnibus motion by 4/23, okay, but PA's decision is stalled. Is this sabotaging her? Good question. I mean, we do not know how long that Pennsylvania case is postponed for. Cynthia, if you did have any extra follow-on thoughts, that's pretty much all of my analysis of Margaret Garnett for the audience. If you have any further comments, feel free to pop me an invite request. Otherwise, I'll move on to kind of finishing and wrapping this up. But if you have thoughts, again, let me know. So, in general, I would like to say...
She does not.
Okay. The prosecution in all 3 cases, in my opinion, aren't playing super fair. Karen still is arguing that the state of New York hasn't fully provided discovery. She's still, to this day, asking for full discovery in the state, so they're not really playing fair. The federal government has repeatedly taken their time and said, you will wait until we indict, and you'll shut up until we indict, and quit asking for things because you will not interfere with our prosecution of justice. They just seem to be playing nasty with her publicly. And then you've got the Pennsylvania case, which is, Thomas Dickey says, hey, you illegally arrested my guy, and they're like, yeah, we'll deal with that later. We're not going to talk about it right now. None of the jurisdictions in this case so far feel to me like they really are wanting to be seen as fair and impartial. They all seem to have a mission to make sure Luigi Mangione gets convicted of something somewhere. What is the likely future of Luigi Mangione? I'm going to cover that and then we're going to kind of end for the night. Is it possible, again, that the federal trial of Luigi won't even start until a new administration takes place in the White House? Yes. Trump has an obvious power base right now, and he wants to get a conviction. He wants this to be, I think, a landmark case. That's been made known. But it's very possible that state case could take a long time, especially if it ends in a hung jury and they have to retry it. So, and then what happens? I guess maybe I want Cynthia's opinion on that. If you're still here, Cynthia, I want to know this question. If the state of New York has a hung jury, will the federal case against Luigi continue to wait and for them to reconvene a jury and start over again? Or will the federal government prosecute and take the new position? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. If you want to type it in, you can. If you want to take the mic, you can. In the meantime, I'll have Rhonda look for that comment for your answer, and then I'll move on. Can Luigi be sent to El Salvador of Guantanamo Bay as a terrorist? Again, it would be unprecedented in this country to do so. I don't think that that's on the horizon. I think that's against likelihood. Yeah?
Cynthia says, I think the federal case would go and then state retrial after.
Okay. So Cynthia's prediction, and she knows probably better than me, that her guess is that if for some reason there's a hung jury in the state, that the federal government will then proceed with their trial, and the state will just have another reshot at it if the federal government fails, or maybe they'll do it as well. But so yeah, good insight on your thoughts on that matter. Thank you so much. And we covered basically everything that I wanted to cover for tonight in about an hour. I want to open up for questions and answers. I don't know, Rhonda, do we do the filter thing?
Yes,
with the,
we do.
Oh, Rhonda thinks we should do the filter thing.
I was just looking for faces for you.
Oh,
Look.
you know what? I might not be able to do it because I'm on this streaming thing and I don't even know how to.
Good try.
Oh, let's see. Let's hold on. Let me ask.
What filter should he do on his punishment?
So I will tell you this. I'm going to do a couple of wrap-ups real quick. So that people who want to cut out and don't want to sit there and watch me talk like whatever little girl or whatever she wants me to do, if I can put on a filter, I'll put on a filter and I'll take questions and answers. In the meantime, remember, this is all going to be on YouTube, so you can watch the replay. If you missed it, you can watch it on YouTube. Cynthia, thank you so much for being a great guest and coming on and providing some professional legal advice, some legal analysis, your opinions on those things from your perspective in your industry. And I really appreciate everything that you've done for us tonight with that. Thanks everybody for coming. And again, this weekend, I'm going to off and on throughout the weekend, I'm going to have what's called a crime marathon. I'm going to be playing a video game of all things on TikTok while streaming and listening to a bunch of podcasters, especially on the Idaho 4 case. And then I'm going to be commenting on this. So anybody who's part of my subscriber base, you'll get one-on-one conversations with me and I will talk. Yeah, we're wrapping up now, but I will have a question and answer. And if I can figure out how to put a humiliation filter on, I can.
You do need to do Luigi.
Is there a Luigi filter? What? Hold on a second.
Also, people are saying that they can't read the chat because of the background you're using tonight. So maybe the green screen is preventing them from seeing.
That sucks. Okay, I got some things to work out. I'm going to see if I can put on a filter in TikTok using.
If the dark video were on the bottom, it'd definitely be easier to read comments.
Okay. I'll try to. So it is overlaying, but because it's white on white, you're not seeing it.
Saying, yeah.
Okay, I will fix that for next time. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Using Live Studio.
You guys gotta wait so you can see the Luigi face.
Is Luigi the filter that I would use? I can't believe TikTok would even allow that. Yes, I can apply filters in TikTok or Live Studio. Okay. As of right now, to allow some basic enhancements, not the full library of face filters. Oh, okay.
So see what's up there, what's available.
I'm just seeing if it can. If it's too much of a pain in the butt, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to end the live. I'm going to jump back on a live with the filter applied, so I can just do it through my phone. That way, I'll keep the promise of the Luigi, if that is a thing. I'll keep that. Yay. So I'm going to end this official live right here on both streams, TikTok and YouTube. I'm going to restart a live, and then I'm going to put on a humiliation filter that my wife has picked for me for thanking you guys for giving me gifts.
The gift goal.
Yeah. So yeah, I have to make it a little bit more difficult in the future.
Right?
But anyways, so thank you all for coming. Stay tuned. Stay tuned because within 5 minutes you should see a pop-up saying I'm going live again. And if you want to ask questions and answers about either Luigi Mangione or the Idaho 4 case, open questions and answer for about 20-30 minutes.